We moved very, very often. We moved, and we could pick up our stuff and move within about 30 minutes because we had so little. And from the time I was very small, I used to have big dreams. I dreamed about having a nice bed to sleep in. I tell everybody I came from a very close family. There was 6 of us in the family, and there were 2 beds, 3 in one and 3 in the other. But we never lived in a house that had electricity. The houses that we lived in were falling down when we moved in. But from the time I was a little boy, I used to have big dreams. I'd dream about a bed that I was sleeping in that had a nice fluffy pillow instead of straw. And my whole childhood was one big dream. I never had any toys, no baseball, softball, football, basketball, nothing, and I never learned any of those sports. The clothes that I wore were clothes that someone else had thrown away, that were either too big or too little for me. And kids made fun of me in school. I would go to school barefoot even when it's snow on the ground. We never had enough food to eat. And my little brother and I resorted to making mud pies. That's taking the dirt, mixing it up with water, patting it out, make it look like a hamburger patty, and eating it. And it stops the hunger pains. And when you're really hungry, you have a lot of pain in your stomach. And it's not comfortable at all. But my mother had, as I said, finished the 8th grade, and what she made us do is promise to her that we would all finish the 12th grade. She figured if we could go through the 12th grade, we would have a great education. And we moved and moved and moved and moved, and I think it was 16 times that we had moved when I finally finished the 12th grade. So, some of the things that I learned growing up was that the kids that picked on me in school, they would beat me up, and I was nothing but skin and bones, and I couldn't defend myself. So I told my dad one day, I said, about a particular kid, I said, what I'm going to do is sneak up behind him and get a baseball bat and bust his brains out. And my dad, I think I was 10 at the time, my dad said, well, you know what they say. And I thought, oh, okay, here comes another one. He said, you have to look at yourself when you shave. When I shaved, I didn't even have peach fuzz. But he meant that you live with you, and you know what you do, whether it's right or wrong. And you have to live with that knowledge. That was one very important lesson he taught me. But I went ahead and smacked that kid over the head with a little baseball bat anyway. And I went home and I told my dad about it. I said, well, I hit Wayne Rixey over the head with a baseball bat. It was a little one. He sat there for a second. He handed me a nail and a hammer. And he said, go over there and drive that nail in that fence post. So I did. Came back, put the hammer down. He said, now, when you go back and apologize, tell me about it, and then we'll pull that nail out. So I thought about it for 3 or 4 days, and I finally decided I should apologize. And I did, and I go home and I tell my dad that I apologize. He handed me the hammer. He said, go pull that nail out. I pulled the nail out of the fence post, took it back, gave him the nail and the hammer. And he said, so what's left over there? I said, a hole where the nail was. He said, now remember that. In life, you do things to hurt people's feelings. You can say something, you can do something that will hurt their feelings and go back and apologize. you still have the hole left in their lives. Whatever you do, remember, there are consequences. And I thought about that a long time, and I can't tell you the number of times I went by that fence post and I looked, the hole was still there. So in life, remember that if you do things that you know you shouldn't do, and you hurt someone's feelings, you just created a hole in their life that will never be filled, no matter what you say or what you do. And the other thing my dad said is, you cannot unring a bell that's been rung. Now, as a kid, I thought that was pretty stupid. If you rang a bell, why would you want to unring it? You can't unring it. Once you ring it, it's rung. Once you say something to somebody, you can't take your words back. So, some very, very important lessons. And the clothes that I wore, as I said earlier, were clothes that someone else had thrown away. This is my sidekick. She has been the love of my life up until now. No, she's always been the love of my life, and we've done some neat things together, and we've had big dreams. Jeunesse is one of those dreams that we had, and we've had some others before that. FFI, some others. Okay, fine. She said I gotta talk faster. Okay, I'm gonna talk real fast now. Well, one day, the one big problem I had with my mother is that one big lesson she gave me was when I asked her things like, why are we so poor? And she would say, we're not poor, we're just broke. I'm thinking, what's the difference, you know? She said, poor is a state of mind. If you think you're poor, you'll be poor all your life. Broke is temporary, we're just broke. We can always get money, and I'm thinking, okay, well, haven't we? The big thing that really bothered me day in and day out was to try to get my mother to tell me that she loved me, and she would not tell me. And that bothered me so often. I asked her one day when I was about 14 to tell me that she loved me, and she wouldn't do it. So I thought about that, and I thought to myself, you know, I really don't care if anybody loves me. I love me, and there are things that I want to do in this world while I'm here. So I went down and I sat on a creek bank, and I wrote out the things that I wanted to do. Number one, and you get a chuckle out of this, number one was I wanted to be a multimillionaire by the time I was 35. The banker's son was 35, and I figured since he was a banker's son, he probably was a multimillionaire. The wrong conception on my part that he was a rich, wealthy man. Second thing on there, I wanted to have food to eat. You can tell I took care of that one. But anyway, then I wanted to have new clothes that were mine, not just clothes that someone else had thrown away. And the next thing was I wanted to have a nice house to live in that had electricity. I never, in the whole 16 years that I was home, never lived in a house that had electricity. So there was never anything electric in our place. The next thing I wanted to do was I wanted to get a car, and I wanted to travel all over the world and meet wonderful people like you. that was the biggest surprise, was because I didn't know how wonderful the people that I was going to meet really were. You were far beyond what I dreamed of. So, those were the big dreams that I had, and I need to rush on through to tell you what happened to all those dreams. When I graduated from high school, I was 16 years old. I hitchhiked away from home. The first guy that picked me up asked me, he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I don't know, where are you going?" He said, "I'm going home. I live in Memphis." I said, "That's where I'm going, Memphis." I had no idea what Memphis was or what it was all about. I didn't know anyone there. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any place to stay. But I rode with him to Memphis. He stopped when we got into Memphis and he said, "You have to get out here because I turned down that street to go to my house." So I got out and standing on the street corner and I'm thinking, boy, I've done it now. I don't have any money. I don't have any place to stay. I don't have a job. Okay, so there was a little Tuttle House restaurant there that I went in that restaurant, and they used to have little baskets that had crackers in them, and on one end of the basket they had a ketchup, and on the other end they had mustard. So I'd go in and open up all those crackers, and I'd put mustard on some, ketchup on the other, and I'd ask them for a glass of water. That was my food. Eventually I did get a job, and I was staying in, I finally got this lady to allow me to stay in the attic of her boarding house. She rented rooms to people. So it was had a little army cot in a window, a dormer window, and that's where I slept when I was there. And it was maybe 150 degrees up there, I think, in the summertime. And the whole time I was there, I was looking around to try to find something better all the time. And I finally found out that the Army had a program whereby that if you passed their exams, they would guarantee in writing to pay your way through college. And I figured that's the only way I'm ever going to be able to go to college, so I took the test, passed it with flying colors. Then they said, okay, great, this is wonderful. We need a copy of your birth certificate, and we'll go on to the next step. So I said, what's a birth certificate? So, well, you know, when you were born in a hospital, they give you a birth certificate. I said, I was born in a cotton field, just my mother. And she delivered me, tied off the cord, everything. And having watched my children be born, I'm thinking, how in the world does she ever put up with all that? But that's how I came in the world. Then I had to find out a way to get a birth certificate. So I got a friend that worked at the post office near this little town where I grew up. And he helped me make a birth certificate, get it filed with Nashville, Tennessee. And took it back down to the recruiting station and told him, I said, oh, I got the birth certificate. He said, great, we still need to have your mom and dad come down here and sign. I said, that's going to be difficult to do because my mom has been dead for a couple of years and my dad can't write. He said, for real? I said, yeah, for real. So he said, well, you got to get him here. I said, what does he do? I said, he makes an X. So I wrote a letter to my brother. I said, bring Daddy down here to Memphis. He's got to make an X on this paper. So he brings him down. They put the paper in front of my dad, and it had a black X on the line that you sign on. He pecked that a couple times, and he said, somebody's already forged my name. Had an X. So I tell people that we started Dos Equis. If you're in Spanish, you know Dos Equis is a beer. So anyway, I got in the Army. I stayed in for 6.5 years till I finished all of my degree requirements. And I came out and I went to work in the aerospace industry. And first project I worked on was the X-15. If anybody knows what the X-15 is, look it up in Google. And then after I was there for a couple of years, I heard that NASA was coming out with a RFP for a launch processing system for the space shuttle. So I moved over to Orlando, Florida, and I went to work on bidding on that project. And after 2 years of working on it, I won that contract. That contract paid a lot of commission. My first commission check was $6 million. The value of that contract was almost $1 billion.
Wow.
And so with $6 million, you can buy a lot of clothes, a lot of cars, a lot of houses, a lot of food. And that kick-started my life. I was lucky to find this wonderful woman here a few years later. And that was another part of my dream, that I was going to find somebody that was just going to be absolutely knock you off your feet. She did. And when I got up off the floor, I don't know what I'd do without her up here. But anyway, when I first met her, one of the many things that touched my heart was the fact that she has so much passion for children. And I've always been a person who, when I was a little kid, I'd dream of a house that I could take a lot of these little kids into that grew up near me as sharecroppers' kids. Never had any clothes. They didn't have enough food to eat. They didn't have shoes, just like me. And I thought it would be really nice if I could build a house and put all these little kids in there and have somebody to do the cooking. And so today, we have a lot of places around the world where we've built schools and dormitories and orphanages and all this kind of stuff, where we have a lot of little kids. And if you could go with us to some of these places, you would understand why it makes me cry every time I go to a place like that, because I see these little kids and all these memories come back into my mind about what I wanted to do when I was a kid and how I dreamed about what I could do for kids as I grew up to be an adult. So if you've ever had a chance to go to any of the Jeunesse Kids properties, that would be great to do that if you can. In the meantime, you know that we have done this in China, Ecuador, Uganda, Kenya, India, lots of other places. And we continue to do that as long as we're alive. We'll continue to build places for kids and have a haven for them. Well, anyway, so we'll keep doing this. We've got a list of places to go next that's a half-mile long. And every time I get around these kids, I'm such a sap. I mean, I cry, because my heart aches for little kids because they can't help themselves. And if we don't do something to help them, they can't help themselves. So it has to have somebody else that's an adult that can help them. Did they find the picture? This little boy here in Kenya, he was standing in a line of little kids with their hands up for a high five, smiling so big, nobody touched that kid because he had snot all over his face, holes in his sweater, no shoes on, and everybody avoided him. And immediately what that did to me was reminded me of when I was a kid and we would go out on recess and they'd line everybody up and they're going to play softball or something. Nobody ever picked me. because I didn't know how to play softball, because I never had a ball. And it reminded me so much of that. So I go down and I give this little boy a high five. He latched onto my leg, snot all over my pants, and he wasn't going to turn loose. He was hanging on for dear life, and I'm trying to walk with this kid hanging on my leg. And I said to the teacher, I said, we're going to have to leave pretty soon. So what am I going to do about this little guy here? He said, I don't know what to tell you, because he's never had a friend, and he has one now. And he loves you with all of his heart. He doesn't even know who you are, but he loves you so much. You can imagine what that did to me. I stood there and just cried and cried, this little snotty-nosed kid. And years later, we're looking around and we're trying to find pictures of that visit to that school, and we found him. There he is. Still had the snot on his nose. But that was from a picture. Okay. All right, anyway, I'm going to wrap up. I talk too much. But I will say this, that if you're not a dreamer, I feel sorry for you. Because I'll tell you, in my life, the best things I ever did was dream. Any situation that I got into that was unpleasant, I would dream about a pleasant thing. And it always turned out really beautiful. So if you look at my dreams when I wrote down when I was 14 about being a multimillionaire, I made multi-million-dollars when I was 32, not 35. I hadn't reached 35 yet. I bought a few houses. I gave everybody in my family a house. My brothers, my sisters, my cousins, I gave them a home. I bought cars for people that didn't have a way to go to work. I gave them cars. It's just amazing to watch the difference in someone's life when they know that someone cares. So I would always tell you, care for your family. Love everybody in your family, because it's quite a possession to have somebody that you know that loves you. So, okay, I guess that's all I'm going to say.
He's going to give me a second. I think the most important thing that you need to realize and get out of what Randy was saying is just what Scott told you earlier. We always said, conceive, believe, achieve. If you can conceive it in your mind, believe it in your heart, you can achieve it if you work really hard and you don't give up and you keep going. And that's what Randy did, and he was able to achieve all his dreams. And I hope that you, as you become more and more successful in Jeunesse, you'll want to do what Randy and I have done and give back, and what so many Jeunesse distributors have done to help children around the world. As you become successful, you need to touch other lives and help them. So thank you very much. Enjoy Dream Night tonight.